Hello, everybody. My name is John Rink, and this is Social Time, the program that talks about the importance of developing community and interpersonal relationships. For me as a Christian, the community and interpersonal relationships that I have really brought me to a relationship with Jesus Christ and ultimately salvation. Today, I want to talk about the importance of developing community and interpersonal relationships as it relates to proximity. About 9 years ago, when I was 30, I'm 39 now. You do the math. That was 9 years ago. 30 plus 9 equals 39. About 9 years ago, I took a trip out to Denver, Colorado. The goal of the trip was to go to this young adult group that met out in Grace Chapel, Denver. I had gone to Denver the year before that to just see family. It was a family trip. My dad's from Denver, Colorado. My mom's from Schenectady, New York. It's a long story how they met. I'll get into maybe a later time. So on that trip, when I was out seeing family, I saw a Grace Chapel in Denver, which really has no affiliation with the Grace Chapel that I go to in Clifton Park, New York, where I'm from. But I'm thinking to myself, Grace Chapel, Denver. I should see what they're about. So after that trip, I went home and I Google searched Grace Chapel, Denver. Come to find out, they had a young adult group, which was at the time in my age range, 18 to early 30s. So I'm thinking to myself, hmm, I'd like to go out there and visit that group sometime. So I did what any person would do. I up and bought an Amtrak ticket, and I left on my voyage to meet the people at Grace Chapel, Denver, on what day was I forgot. I think it was October 8th of that year. And I took a 2 day trip out to Denver, and I would spend about 5 days in Denver before I made my way back by train again to Schenectady, where I got off the train. Part of the trip out there was to see family that I hadn't seen in a while. The other part of the trip was to connect, or at least try to connect with young adult Christian groups out in Denver, Colorado. I didn't really have transportation or really any means of getting around out in Denver, Colorado. So I was kind of I was kind of stuck. I would take taxis when I could, or use the Denver transportation system. Their commuter rail system out in Denver is awesome. If you're ever out in Denver, and if you have an Uber account on your phone, I would check out what there is to see and do around Denver. At the time when I was out there was no Uber. 9 years ago, there wasn't Uber, folks. That's how long 9 years is. So I went to the young adult group at Grace Chapel, Denver. My friend Tim made the joke, and we still kind of joke about it to this day, that I was going to meet our aliases at the young adult group, our alter egos at the young adult group in Grace Chapel, Denver, that related to our people in our young adult group at Grace Chapel and Clifton Park. So we still joke about that to this day. So I get out there. I go to the young adult group at Grace Chapel in Denver. It was a good group of people to meet. I do not regret going to that group at all. But I started to realize that there was really no way that I was ever going to be able to form any kind of relationships or establish any kind of community with the young adult group out in Denver, Colorado. Sure, we would have been able to use social media to communicate back and forth, but if I was going to build any kind of community, that would have been me getting involved with their lives as part of the Grace Chapel community out in Denver, which would have been impossible since Denver, Colorado is almost 2,000 miles from the capital region of New York. So to be able to be part of the community of young adults in Denver would not happen, which really goes with the idea of proximity. When you think of proximity, you can really think of it as being here, near, and far. Here, think about it as being 0 to 10 miles from where you are. Near can be thought of as being 10 to 50 miles from where you are. Far can be considered 50 to more than 100 miles from where you are. If you're trying to meet with people that are more than 1,000 miles from where you are, or even really more than 100 miles from where you are, that is impossible because you're not going to be able to be part of their lives. You're not going to be able to be part of that community. You're not going to be able to really even join in on activities that they're in. Sure, you'll be able to hear about them through Facebook or whatever kind of social media that you use, but you can't really form networks that are personable through social networks like Facebook, Twitter, or those sort of things. You have to be present in the moment. So, for me to be able to establish relationships with those people at Grace Chapel in Denver would have been impossible. Going along with the point I'm trying to make with this episode of Social Time is that the same idea of proximity can be thought of in regards to your relationships with your friends and family. Your family can be considered people you are that are here. Your friends are near, but in most cases, you're probably better connected and have better relationships with your family than you do with your friends based on what your definition of family is. I don't know if I necessarily consider family to be just genetic. You can have people around you that you also consider family, even though you're not genetically related, but that's besides the point. Friends are people that are near to you, and really, even acquaintances are people that could be considered far. So you can think of proximity in that same sense too. My trip out to Denver, I would have never been able to brought my friendships with those people closer to just acquaintances, if that. So when you do consider a community, when you do consider networks, it's important to think of it as here, near, and far, you're better off trying to develop that community and your network of people who are here and near to you. So, the point of this episode of Social Time was to introduce the concept of proximity as it relates to networks. That does that does end this episode of Social Time. Remember, folks, be safe, but get out there and be social. Thanks for listening to Social Time. My name is John Rink.